Hey, what's up folks? It's Jang here from ultimaterc.com, about to embark upon another journey of RC building. This time the RC of choice is a Made R1 Rock Buggy. It's a 2.2 class rock crawler. It's a shafty. It has portal axles, which are super cool. If you haven't seen portal axles before, stay tuned because they're really interesting and I really like what they do. Made is a company based in Korea. I've been following their work since they first started getting into the crawler stuff years ago. They've done a lot of really interesting stuff, a lot of different stuff. They've tried a lot of different innovative designs. Some have worked, some haven't, but they've all at the very least looked cool, and they've made nice attempts to push envelopes forward in new directions. So finally I've gotten my hands on my first full kit from them, and you know what, I am just itching to get into this thing, to open the box and to get putting it together. So let's go. All right, so I've got my workspace all laid out, all nice and neat. Like I like to start all clean and organized. I got my Cow RC work mat here. It's magnetized. It's going to help me to not lose screws and stuff that I will certainly be dropping. Everything is open, and it just makes it a lot easier when you're organized to start into a new kit, especially when you have no idea what's coming up, because I've never built a kit from this company. We start with the axles, which is great because I wanted to get right to them because, like I said, portal axles, cool thing. And again, if you haven't seen them before, you're about to. Everything rides on ball bearings, not surprisingly. This is not intended to be an entry-level, bottom-level kit. It's really designed. It's intended to be something, you know, pretty good and pretty significant that'll last you for a while. Got a couple of bearing carriers, little sleeves that actually insert inside to give the inner support for the main shafts. Those get pushed in. Now they give you a little tube of their branded grease. It's like some sort of makeup little decanter here, and yeah, it just looks like face lotion or something. I'm actually not going to use this, not because I have anything against the material itself. I'm going to use Tamiya ceramic grease just because it's in a tube and it's easier to dispense. It's literally that simple. That's all. The only reason I'm going for is it's just easier to do this rather than dipping into that wide mouth little tub. Normally when I build a kit, I do not like to use a whole lot of grease, but because this is a slow speed kit where durability is going to be a little bit more important than minimizing drivetrain wear, I just slopped a whole bunch of grease in there. And I'll do that on all of the enclosed components that rotate. Here come a couple of the shafts now. One of them is a little bit longer, one is a little bit shorter, so make sure that you're careful with lining those up properly. All right, check this out. This looks like just a shiny piece of blingy plastic, right? No, this is made of steel. This is actually cast steel, and it is thick chrome coated. This thing has some serious weight to it, and that's just a beautiful touch. Of course, it's going to get completely scratched up, but you know, looks nice to begin with. Here's an interesting thing about this kit. It uses, from the looks of it, exclusively Phillips head screws. So I'm going to be using my Phillips head bits on my screwdriver, which I rarely ever use for pretty much the entire assembly. And there's that. Beautiful. Okay, now we can get to the more fun stuff. More gears. Lots more gears. There we go. Get some ball bearings in there. Find some gears. There we go. There's a little bit of gear reduction that goes on there. And there it is. that is the portal gear setup. You can see that there are 2 gears down in there. The top one is a little bit smaller. Like I said, it's giving a little bit of gear reduction, and this is all going to get sealed in here. And the end result is that your axle, your actual output, which is just this little stubby piece here, has a dog-boned end on it. It's going to take me a second to get this lined up. Oh, I feel it. There it goes. Hey, stay together. There we go. So you can see that the output is actually down below. It's actually lower than the center line of the differential. What that does is it gives you more center clearance, especially under the pumpkin. So all of this area in here is raised compared to normal. You still have these low points over here, which are probably a little bit lower because of the extra bulk of the housing, probably a little bit lower than on a standard setup, but at least your axles, your stub axles are moved down, so the entire main solid axle assembly is moved up, and that's how a portal axle setup works. This is a little bit suboptimal here, I would say, the way these go together. There's a screw that comes in from the end, from the outside end, and then on the back you have to put on your own 3mm lock nut, which is fine and all, except there's no groove. Normally I would have expected there to be something to hold the nut in place. Instead you have to use pliers to hold it as you tighten everything down. This whole part of the assembly is pretty much symmetrical, so it's just going to be the same thing on the other side to finish up the other portal. Up front you use these very basic traditional looking knuckles. They look like they come from an HPI or something. Nothing unusual there. Regular little dog bone stub axles go straight through. Use a little step screw, little shoulder bolt type of thing. Actually, now that I think about it, this feels like it has a little bit more of a Tamiya influence to it. I remember assembling something that felt kind of like this on a FF01. And that takes care of the front one. And the rear is going to be all the same in the middle, except out at the ends it'll be locked out, so you've got no steering by default. You remember this, right? You kind of have to hunt around for the spot where the axle will actually fit in, because there's that half moon shape at each end of the shaft, and you have to get it lined up pretty well, especially when this is all new and hasn't been broken in yet. That's how the rear will go, just a straight lockout. So there actually is a subtle difference between the front and rear portal gearboxes, and what you didn't see, because I turned off the camera because it was boring and frustrating to watch, is that I had actually messed up and put one of the lower gears, the larger gear, the 16-tooth gear, in the front that belonged in the rear. The difference is that the rears have a 6mm axle hole. The fronts have a 5mm axle hole. So you can successfully fit the rear gear onto the front. It's not going to work properly, but it will fit together. However, you cannot put the fronts on the rear. So if you do the fronts first, like me, and then you get to the rear and you find that there's one that doesn't fit, and you're like, what did they do here? This manufacturer is screwed up. No, it's not them. In this case, it was me. Yeah. So watch out for that. The ones with the bigger holes, the larger gear with the bigger holes. Reserve those for use on the rear axle, and life will be much better for you. Ah, yes, much better indeed. That feels pretty good now, even though it's not even fully broken in yet. Still pretty smooth. Now your rear axle gets some rear link mounts that get installed. It looks like they will be going like that, and then another one on the other side. Those will get bolted down. The front's going to get the same thing to start with, but then it will also get the servo mount installed here. So one side gets bolted together the same way as the rear did. The other will be a little bit different. And here is the difference for the front. There's your servo mount. It's going to use these flathead screws, countersunk. And those are going to go through. Got 3 of them. They are actually in 2 different sizes, so be careful on that. There's that. There's your front axle. There's a rear axle. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a break, and when I come back I will install a steering servo and get the links together for the steering and start working on assembling the main chassis, the main tube chassis with the roll cage and all the cool looking stuff.